You're listening to Mark of the Maker. Hey everybody, I'm Mark Steiner and you're listening to Mark of the Maker, and this is episode 65 of the show. And we have a guest with us. We're going to have a very interesting conversation. I say that every single time, but gosh, I hope it's actually true. Let's make sure we have the regular crew here with us. We should have everybody. Mr. Michael Birch, are you with us?
Here.
All right. And we have Mr. Sean Kendrick.
Hey, hey.
And we have Mr. Tom Crine.
Hello.
That's Tom's refreshed voice. He took a beach vacation a little while ago here, so he's feeling good.
Yeah. Had a great time.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so before we jump into it, we need to take care of business here. We have a couple of people we need to thank. First of all, the show absolutely would not be possible without the support of folks through Patreon. Patreon's a website where people can sign up to send us a monthly contribution or donation. Those dollars keep this show moving and pay for a bunch of cost and expense behind the scenes. So high five to all of our patrons who support us through that website. That's patreon.com. We have a very loyal crew there. They've stuck with us through thick and thin, thin being when we didn't have episodes out for a little while due to some issues. But they've been very supportive, and we deeply appreciate their efforts to help us keep moving forward and bring you the show.
We'd also like to thank George Palagoni of American Metal Exchange. He's been supplying us with tie and zirconium as makers for quite a few years, so it seemed pretty natural to have him, help support the show. He carries a lot of Zirc, a lot of titanium, and what you may not know, though, is he is also a United States distributor of Damasteel, and you can get that stuff to size. You can order it to size, which makes life so much easier. Check him out at amxinc.com. Say hi to George for us. Thanks, George.
All right. We have adopted a new occasional cast member, which some of you will be very happy about, and she came back to join us, and this one's kind of is it safe to call it a history episode?
I'd say that's a safe thing to say.
Yeah, history/topical episode. Dr. Rachel Parikh is back with us again. Welcome back, Rachel.
I am so excited to be back. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Glad you're here.
I didn't say doctor last time, so
I know.
I got a disappointed note from your father. He's like, I insisted that she be a doctor, and okay, it's not exactly what I thought it was going to be, but you know what? You need to get it in there, sir. So.
Exactly. You know what? Every time I'm like, Dad, you never know if there's an emergency in an airplane where somebody needs to identify a South Asian weapon, and then I think, like, is there a doctor on board? Like, yeah, I can specifically answer that question. That. Saving your life, not so much, but.
Oh, wait. I have a picture on my phone. Hold on. Scrolling.
No, sir, that is not a Kundan, and how dare you?
How dare you? Get back in your seat, sir.
All dumber for you having said it. Now sit down.
Oh, jeez.
Watch the movie.
Just in-flight fact check. That's what they call that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Rachel came back. It was really fun to have you with us last time. Rachel came back, and she's going to take us on a journey. We're all going to go on a journey. So pack your bag, pack light, because we're going to travel pretty far. And Rachel's going to take us on a journey. Tell us what you're going to talk about, Rachel.
We're going to talk about the Katar. It's arguably India's most iconic weapon, and it's my favorite weapon. I just want to say how excited I am to say my favorite weapon is, because this group and your amazing audience would be like, yeah, I get it. Instead of being like, oh my God, should we call security?
No, those are pretty good.
Yeah, like, oh, that's nice. I like that Monet painting over there. I'm like, right. I like this weapon. So yeah, this is my favorite weapon of all time.
Excellent.
Okay.
Right.
My arm is already raised. I have a question, Doctor.
I cannot save your life. I'm sorry.
So when we listen to the seminar, I guess that's what you call it, webinar?
Lecture. Yeah.
The lecture.
I think they like to call it a webinar.
Oh,
webinar.
I like
that's
that.
That's a good name.
Oh, that's good.
Trademark and copyright.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Yeah, you can use
Yeah.
it. Go ahead. I'm good.
Which was excellent, but I heard Katar and Katar.
Oh.
So- Can you say it both ways?
It's just Katar.
Oh.
Birch
sorry.
stepped in it. We didn't even start yet, and you brought up controversial things.
Francesca said it
Cue
wrong.
the hate.
Okay, wrote that down.
You're going to so regret coming back to join us. I'm sorry to say. We're like
No.
2 minutes in. And, it's a great question, though. Pronunciation is something we all struggle with on this show, so we're happy to get it right.
Yeah, Katar. I can give you guys a little etymology behind the name if you would like.
Ooh.
Yes, please.
So, the word Katar is a derivation of a Tamil word, Katari, which literally translates to stabbing blade. And Tamil is a language spoken in southern India from Tamil Nadu. And the word Katar can be found in modern Hindi, Punjabi, and even colonial transliterations. And then in Sanskrit, it is known as Katara or Katari. And there are also regional names that come off of the Sanskrit version. For example, in Marathi, it is known as Katyara. So there's quite a few different variations, but the name itself seems to derive from this Tamil word Katari. And it's believed that the Katar originated in South India, so this would make sense. And then some people know the Katar as the Jamdar. It's spelled Jamdhar. And that comes from Persian. It literally translates to angel of death's edge, which I love.
Ooh.
But it's romanticized heavily as the devil's tooth. Sorry, I had to use that
Oh, that's cool too.
voice. Yeah. So it's very like Indiana Jones-esque.
Yeah.
The
I was going to say,
term-
that's Sean's favorite band.
The devil's tooth. That'd actually be a great band's name.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah. Yeah. Angel of Death's Edge is too long, but Devil's Tooth would be perfect.
Yeah, but you have the whole AODE thing.
That's right. Yeah,
it's
that's
totally
true.
doable.
That's true. No. You have a good point. Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted at an etymology moment, which is
No. That was our little etymology breakdown of the word Katar.
Yeah, don't worry, we will dumb this down.
It's no matter the language, it sounds nasty.
Yeah.
When is that Tamil period? When was that?
So that is a great question. Francesca and I often talked about when did the Katar actually appear, because that is still debatable. And I apologize in advance for those of you who listen to Francesca Levy, who is the Arms and Armor Conservator at the Royal Collection Trust, and I talk about the Katar for Lorica clothing. Some of the stuff that I will be talking about is repeating a little bit of what we said, but we're also going to be talking about some other really great Katar examples. So
Okay.
I'm really excited about that. But
This is not a rerun, people.
no, it's not. It's not a rerun. This is Rachel's show. No, I'm kidding. So
We're very familiar with your demands for do you know who I am. We remember from last time.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So Francesca's not here, but probably will be better, honestly, if she was here. But that's okay. But yeah, we're not sure when the Katar came about. Most scholars believe that it did originate in southern India. So Tamil Nadu was probably where it started to develop and evolve. And I think the earliest sculpture that has a Katar in it dates to around either the 10th or 13th century. And it's a sculpture of a Hindu goddess of Durga, and she's holding a Katar. It's in the Chhatrapati Shivaji Museum in Mumbai. That is supposed to be the earliest visual reference to the Katar, but we still don't know how early this weapon traces back to. There are a lot of I don't knows, so I apologize in advance for being like, I don't know.
That would be considered like the late medieval period I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
All right. I'm trying here.
Yeah, that would be like the equivalent of a late medieval period in Western terms. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So I know we've talked about the Katar multiple times in the past. I think it was probably part of our ethnic knives episode or got a mention somewhere in there a long time ago. So for people that aren't familiar with the shape, like the general profile of a Katar, what should they be thinking about?
Okay.
The devil's tooth.
The devil's tooth.
It's right in the name.
Yes. So it generally comprises of an H-shaped hilt. So you have 2 parallel bars and 2, sometimes 3 crossbars that would be gripped with a fist. And then your knuckles rest just above the blade, which is triangular in shape. It essentially becomes a form of or extension of your hand. It's a punch dagger. So it's meant to be punched or thrusted into an opponent and sometimes even prey, which we'll talk about hunting with a Katar, which is super cool and gruesome. And it's what I love about this weapon is that it's just so versatile. Its shape is versatile, and we'll talk about combination Katars and different types, but it's an offensive and defensive weapon. It could be used singly. It could be used in pairs. You can pair it with a shield. You could pair it with another weapon, like a sword. It just has so much to offer. So it's not a surprise that it was used for combat. It was used for hunting, as I just mentioned. It also took on ceremonial purposes. So they were blinged out and worn at court as status symbols. And it's then not surprising that you find it throughout India, from the north to the south.
Okay. So yeah, we've definitely talked about this weapon before. It is a very broad blade, right? This isn't generally a narrow, daggery kind of thing. It's more of like a broad, fat dagger. Like tooth is a great description. That
Yes.
It definitely fits with the appearance of it.
Absolutely. I mean, you do get variations of the blade, but and I can go into that in a second. But generally, it is a broad blade, and because it is being punched or thrusted, the amount of force the blade has to be wide enough and sturdy enough to withstand that. So it's important that that blade has a broad shape to help kind of make sure that that blade does not bend or break.
Right.
Now, do you know where that design, the purpose behind that design, or where it came from? Because in modern weapons, we have what's called a push dagger, which is basically, think of the handle of a fixed blade, turn it 90 degrees, and you have that in your hand. It's very comfortable, has the same feeling. This is very, very different. Is it, do you think it was designed that way because of how they could make stuff, or is there another reason for it?
Oh, that's such a great question. This is one of those, I don't know.
Well, it's got 2 bars, so you're kind of squeezing the 2 bars, and then it's got a bar on each side.
Right.
I assume the bar on each side could also help with vertical positioning. Is that?
Yeah. Yes.
Seems like it would help stabilize if you're cutting using the edge.
Exactly. And it also acted as kind of like a wrist guard.
There you go.
That makes sense.
That's the other thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Counterbalance too, right?
Exactly. And that's another thing that I love about the Katar is that when you're holding it, the balance in your hand is just so nice. It's like, I equate it to a weighted blanket. It's just perfect. It just balances in your hand beautifully. And a well-made Katar will balance beautifully in your hand no matter how long the blade is. And I should mention that the blade can vary in length from several inches up to several feet. But a really well-made one will balance perfectly in your hand no matter how long the blade is.
That's amazing. So
yeah.
Do you find that on the longer bladed ones that the 2 that goes up past the wrist, the guards per se, do you find that those are longer or thicker to balance it out?
That's a great question. Yes, they're slightly longer, but mostly they're noticeably thicker.
Oh, okay. So I had no idea what the reason was what that was. Now that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna hold one of these days.
Oh yeah, you'll have to come to the museum. We can pull out a bunch of Katars for you to hold. Yeah.
It's I think when we talked about this before, one of the questions that I had, it always looks like something that you could basically lash to your forearm with those arms coming up the way they do. But if it's just for balance, then that's a whole different thing. Was there ever any indication of attachment points for like to strap it to your forearm so it'd be super stable and kind of act like part of your arm?
That's a great question. I remember somebody bringing this up to me that they have seen visual references of the Katar being wrapped around somebody's forearm. I haven't personally come across anything like that. I think it would offer more stability for sure, but the way in which your hand is grabbing that crossbar, it feels like it's just this natural extension of your arm.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, and we can talk about this. Mark, this would go into my like top 5 favorite weapons of all time.
Okay.
But it's a gauntlet sword from India. It's called the pata. It operates almost the same way as the Katar. It has a crossbar that you grip with your fist. And this large sword essentially becomes an extension of your forearm.
Yeah.
Like all of the movement comes from like your shoulder and your forearm, and the sword becomes an extension of yourself.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I see the Katar. It just becomes an extension of your body.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. It's like a lot of these like ethnic and historical blades, at first glance, you look at some of the features and you're like, that's got to be ceremonial. That's got to be. Mm-hmm. But we find the more you dig into them, that seems like they're very purpose-driven. Like, I think we had that with the Jambia or whatever. We were wondering about the sheath, why it was extra curved, and it was because the way it was held.
Yes.
And it was like these things all have a purpose to them, each part, and that's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just looking at it and trying to imagine it on my arm, right? It seems like that would just totally brace your wrist versus a push dagger. Mm-hmm. The arms, it just would stabilize that whole region.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe the strap would be kind of a redundant thing at that point. I'm just thinking about a guy riding into battle on a horse or something, or charging, right? It might be, I don't know, it might be really cool because then you're like Edward Katar hands.
Oh my God. That would be the best Halloween costume. Yeah. I think.
From a cavalry standpoint, I mean, you're hitting somebody hard. You've got the force of that horse. You might want to have it lashed to you if you were using it in that kind of role.
Yeah. It seems
Was it used for cavalry? It seems like it'd be a really short weapon for...
It wasn't. Yeah, it was definitely infantry. So it was used while on foot. It was kind of like your... I don't want to say your last resort weapon. Exactly.
Yeah, backup.
Exactly. So like after you've lost your sword, this thing is like tucked into your waist sash and you can just grab it. And it also offers that extra oomph. So like I mentioned, you can use it with another weapon. So you can have the Katar in one hand and a sword in the other and be fighting with both weapons. Yeah. Or using the Katar as an offensive and defensive blade. So... which
seems like it'd really do good in close quarters too.
Absolutely.
When you don't have room to move a sword.
Absolutely. It's meant for hand-to-hand combat and used at very close range.
Like a trench dagger. It's like the India version of a trench dagger.
Exactly.
One of the things that I've heard, and I don't know if it's a misconception or not, but it would, I'd always heard this was for defeating armor. Is there any truth to that?
Yes. So there is a type of blade. It's an armor-piercing blade. It has like a swell from about 3/4 of the way down to the point. And its profile is absolutely beautiful. There was one in Harvard Art Museum's collection, and I can give you guys the accession number so you can check it out. It's 1959.203. And it has a reinforced point, which is called an armor piercing point. And it's intended to pierce through armor. And the Katar was supposed to pierce through armor that was made of textile, mail, or even mail and plate. So it was supposed to be this incredibly highly effective weapon.
And you were saying on the webinar, webinar, that they had done some research on it and found some were iron tipped versus the regular steel.
Yes. Yeah. Francesca was talking about that.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense because I could see the tip breaking off. And otherwise, you punch it in, pull it out, you can bend it, whatever wiggle, it's going to come out.
Exactly.
And then you can just pound it or push it against the ground. And that made a lot of sense.
Yes. Yes.
But I was thinking about that. And did she ever get into, or have you talked to her about how those were built, as far as the forging aspect of it?
Yeah, we were talking about that once a while ago, because this article that is, I hope it comes out soon, that is on the what Katar's blades are comprised of, or the composite of a Katar blade. And we were talking about, well, then how is it forged? And she was like, I think they, more to come in this article. So we're all kind of just itching for this work to come out. It's by, I think, two conservators that are at the Wallace Collection in London that Francesca did work at. So she worked very closely with them as well. So she would actually have more information. See, I told you it would be better if she were here to talk about this. But she said that the article discusses how exactly they were forged using two different types of metal, steel and iron. So I'm really excited about what this article reveals in terms of its manufacture, because very little is actually known about it. And while I was at Harvard using the same Katar that I just mentioned, 1959.203, we actually took x-rays of it to see how it was built. And the images that came out, we were still scratching our heads. We're like, how is this constructed? Like, we couldn't even find the point at which the blade meets the hilt and how it's welded. So there were so many head scratching moments of how, these were actually constructed. So I'm, again, really looking forward to seeing what this article has found in terms of how these blades were composed and how they're put together.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, because we know like the Japanese swords and the laminate work that was done, and some very elaborate laminate work, to see if some of that was put into these too, which would be pretty crazy.
It would be, absolutely.
So this Harvard Art Museum piece is interesting because it has, and you wonder if this is part of the balance thing, but the fact that it looks like it's cut out almost like fullered material where there's material removed. Is that what we're seeing in the picture?
Of the blade?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
So maybe that was part of the balance aspect of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Interesting.
But how?
Yes.
But that's not, it doesn't look scraped.
No.
No.
And you've seen this in person, this one?
Oh, I've worked with this in person, and it's like you can't even tell. And so when we were doing an x-ray on this, I was like, we're going to find out all these like hidden secrets. And it came up like with even more questions.
Yeah.
Which was so unhelpful.
Everything
pretty. Yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I was just going to say, everything I think I know about knife making tells me this won't work,
Right.
But obviously it did. There's no tang. It's just, how is it hooked on? How is it strong enough? I don't.
Exactly.
It blows my mind.
Exactly. And how did the blade not break off or bend every time it was used, which is
right,
mind-boggling. And And I just did this Q&A with our museum on our collection of arms and armor at Worcester. And somebody asked if you could send a time traveler back to take a photo or something like that, what would you have them take a photo of? And I was like, the Katar, because how is it made? I just want to know. It's not even a photo. Please take a video.
There you go.
Of it.
Just roll video when you get
Just
there. That's
roll
all.
video.
I'd love to see a picture of their shop and tools,
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
That would help
Exactly.
start answering some questions anyways.
Exactly.
They've got to have some specialized tools for that kind of relief work.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
was it casting a thing at all at that point?
They did do cast work, but it wasn't that popular. And that's
Casting
the issue.
steel is hard, though.
Yeah, and casting steel is really hard. And the issue with this, and Francesca and I touched on it a little bit, is that with South Asian arms and armor in general, there's so much that we don't know, especially about how these guilds and workshops operated, what tools they use. And I think I mentioned this when I joined you guys a bit ago, was that the issue, I'm sorry, that's Freddie.
Freddie's going to tear somebody up.
Yeah, Freddie's out with his weapons. He's ready to go.
Right.
It's the UPS driver going down the street. You better watch out.
Don't take it, Freddie.
Every dog knows UPS drivers are dastardly.
Yes.
Exactly. Can never be trusted. So one of the things that I mentioned was that, in contrast to studying European material, there's really very little that we know about these artistic guilds or these workshops and how they operated and how they function. The only thing that we know, and this is just based on other workshops such as painting, is that a lot of these traditions were passed down orally, so they weren't written down, and they were passed generationally. So these guilds would go from father to son and so on. So that's as much as we know about their historic practices. Obviously, their contemporary workshops, which I'm dying to see in, for example, in Jaipur and Jodhpur, that still have these practices very much alive or trying to preserve them. And I feel like that would give more insight into what could have been used to make these objects and how these ateliers or workshops operated.
Yeah, I'm just been staring at the fullers on this one. And what is the symbol that looks like a fleur-de-lis at the bottom? I'm sure that's not what that is, but I mean, what does that have
on the blade
significance? Yeah.
Let me see. I have another image up on my computer.
It looks like Patrick from SpongeBob looking the other way.
What do you know what
Could
it
it
made
be
me?
that?
It looked like the Oldsmobile rocket.
Oh,
It had that kind of look to it.
Oh,
But probably not Oldsmobile in that era.
I think it
I don't
predates
know.
Oldsmobile by a couple.
Just a little.
yeah, it's just a few years.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That is a really common motif. It is fleur-de-lis like. It even is described as a fleur-de-lis in many different cataloging of Katars that have that feature. But usually with North Indian Katars, and this is a North Indian example, at that base of the blade, you usually find some kind of motif from which the fullers, or what North Indian Katars are known for, a medial ridge that runs through the center. And sometimes it's this fleur-de-lis shape. Other times it's an elephant's head. Those are the two most common shapes or motifs that you would find on a North Indian Katar.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's definitely a weapon that lends itself well to symmetry, right? So
Yes.
a fleur-de-lis kind of shape makes sense because it carries the symmetry really well, right? But
Yes.
Or Buff Patrick, whatever you want to call it.
Buff
Yeah.
Patrick.
Buff
right.
Patrick. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I can kind of see an elephant with that, with the sides being the tusks.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a skinny elephant or a buff
Very,
Patrick.
yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I love SpongeBob. I'm down
Yeah,
to go with
no,
the Buff
yeah.
Patrick.
Not trying to take anything away from SpongeBob.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a great example at the Met, and I'll give another accession number. It's 36.25.912. And that's another example of a North Indian Katar. And instead of Buff Patrick or a fleur de lis, we have an elephant's head. That is this. I feel like this Katar is the quintessential North Indian Katar. This one's one of my favorites. Mark, this is going in my top 1,500 weapons of all time. It's really just such a great example of what a North Indian Katar is, which is characterized by a shorter, broader blade than its South Indian counterparts, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. It has that, you could see that really prominent medial ridge, the elephant's head. But the best part of this is the inscription, because they really are rarely inscribed. This even has a date. It's dated to 1852. Which is, again, very rare. And Francesca and I have talked about this in our Lorica webinar on how difficult it is to date these objects or even attribute them to a very specific place. But this Katar has an inscription that lets us know where it was made. It was made in Bundi, which is located in Rajasthan. The date is 1852. And then the inscription is so Indiana Jones that I just love it. It says in localized Sanskrit, Bundi Jaram, Lord of Bundi, will protect with this dagger, for when it pierces, it's like the tongue of death.
Oh,
love
wow.
it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kalima Shatite.
Yeah, it's just fantastic.
Wow.
and it looks like they made like waves, like a lake.
Yes.
I mean, it has to be scraping that they're doing.
It has to be. It has to be.
But I gotta say, damn,
Yeah.
that's, I mean, phenomenal work.
It's just such a beautiful blade. It's stunning, and it kind of has that like rippling water effect thanks
Yeah.
to the carving out, and just thinking about how these were constructed, just having those parts either engraved or carved out, or in some cases they're pierced, they're chiseled, how that affected the weight, and just calculating that balance and making these works so perfectly balanced, that blows my mind. And keeping all of that in mind.
So that in person, this piece really is what it looks like, where the high shiny parts are high, and then it's relieved, like you said, into little waves up to the next line. Oh man,
Exactly.
And it looks like folded satin.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
It does.
And it looks like it's been used quite a bit. I mean, unless they all had kind of the rounded tip, but I doubt that very seriously.
No, this was definitely used. It was also resharpened, which meant that it was very much loved. I mean, if this were my dagger, I would love it to death. So yeah, it definitely has traces of it having been sharpened on the edges.
The very up near I guess the hilt, or whatever you want to call it, where it kind of swoops in quite a bit. Is that where it should start out?
Exactly. That's a good eye. Yes. So it has been kind of cut down.
Now, were any of these used in a pure utilitarian type of way? Because I know, like, if you think of secondary weapons, you know, like the modern K-bar or something, you know, they opened their sea rations, they opened all sorts of, I mean, it was used for anything and everything. With this being a secondary weapon or whatever, was it used for mundane tasks?
That's a great question. Most likely not. It was definitely used for a form of combat and to do damage to whoever you were punching it into. So no, it did not have like a utilitarian purpose.
Was there a utilitarian knife that was used for that? I mean,
Yes.
not to get off topic, but
Yeah, it's called a card. It's Kard. It is literally translates from Persian to knife, and it's a single-edged utilitarian knife that warriors and hunters alike would carry. And I've posted cards on Instagram before. I think I posted one recently, maybe a week or so ago, and they're just very elegant. their shape is just beautiful. They have this gorgeous blade that sharply tapers right at the very end to this fine point. And they're usually made out of watered or Damascus steel. They're just very, the simplicity is so elegant. But those would have definitely been used for more utilitarian purposes. And that would have been carried by warriors too, in addition to, for example, a Katar or another type of weapon.
Okay.
Well, then this piece has seen a lot of blood. If that is the wear it took from
It's
just
seen some
and
things.
sharpening like that,
Yeah.
it has seen battle and a lot of it.
Yeah, it has seen some things for sure.
I think so that card name is not unfamiliar. Isn't there a production company that has a model called the Card?
I'm
Does
sure somebody.
DDR? No, that was a crate.
I have a model called the Card.
Oh boy.
Oh, sounds like it.
I see how it is.
Tom
You
just
mean a good knife? Oh,
Tom just
I don't know.
Tom just works like a production company.
Dang.
I thought there was like a Spyderco or somebody that had
They
a
made
model
like-
called a Card.
I don't know.
Maybe not. Interesting. So this second one, Rachel, the first one that you talked about was much, much earlier, or at least you've pointed out before that sometimes these weapons are repurposed over time or in some other stuff like the sword that you told us about before, right? They had pieces from many different eras
Yes.
kind of collected into one.
Yes.
Is there any way to tell from this Katar if it was really made in that time frame or if it was, from an earlier time and then kind of redone by somebody or?
There are definitely examples of Katars where they definitely don't fit into their hilts. Like this one has that kind of, you can see where it's not aligning to the edges of the base of the hilt. This, however, has no sign of it being affixed to a different hilt or it's a new blade or anything. However, that doesn't mean that there weren't instances of this happening. And those you could definitely tell. They usually have like an extra layer of welding when it comes to where the blade meets the hilt. They also, you could tell by just looking at them, and even the balance will be a little bit off, or it doesn't fit properly into the hilt, or the blade is usually too narrow at the base. I remember coming across one where the blade was a little too wide for the base and they tried to cut the edges and it just was like, oh God, there's no going back now. So they were like, we'll just leave it the way it is. And nobody's going to use this. We'll just cover it in gold and it'll be fine. It'll be totally fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's like a Rachel Katar. Just stick some diamonds on it and nobody will notice.
Right.
So-
Yeah.
Could you tell us some more about that because you covered it a little bit in the weaponaire, about the process of applying gold that they did?
Yeah. So there are a couple different ways of applying gold. One would be known as false damascening. It's called koftgari. And that is what we see with this, for example, this Bundi Katar. The inscription in gold is executed through this false damascening. And that involves basically cross-hatching the metal surface, then taking gold or silver wire and putting it across that crosshatch surface and then taking a hammer and hammering it into place. And then it's heat treated. So keeping all of this in mind, using a wire to then delicately transform it into Sanskrit letters is really no small feat. That was one way of applying gold. The other, when you're setting gems, is known as Kundan. Kundan is a really popular technique used across India. And I should mention koftgari. You find that across India too, again, from north or south. And Kundan is actually a jewelry application. You're taking basically your gem and you've carved out like a little socket and you put a natural resin or lac and you place the gem into that resin, and then you take multiple layers of very thin sheets of gold, and you hammer it around the gem to set it into place. And you just build upon the layers to hold and secure that gem into place. And that was adapted from these jewelry practices. That's one of the things that I love about South Asian arms and armor. And I mean, you could say the same thing about European or Japanese counterparts, is that it borrows from other artistic traditions. And yet with South Asian arms and armor, nobody considers these objects as like quote unquote works of art, which we've talked about in the other podcast where I was complaining about how, a tea set is considered a work of art, but this isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it borrows from so many important artistic traditions, especially from India, and Kundan is one of them. So that's another way to use gold on these objects.
Yeah, you still see that sort of gold inlay in modern engraving. You kind of course, better tools, but you cut a little notch out and hammer it in. And if you zoom in on this piece that we've been referencing, you can see like these little dots on the inscription.
Yes.
And is that, it kind of fuzzes out on me, but does that look kind of the same in the gold? Is it kind of like they've hammered little dots? Exactly. Okay.
Exactly. There's an object that is also at Harvard. It's not Indian, it's Persian. It's a knife that has the same thing where the gold has come off, but it has little dots for the inscription as well. So that was definitely a practice of inlaying gold when you have very small spaces to work with, or very small inscriptions or designs to work with.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's incredibly difficult to be able to lay out gold or silver wire to create these letters. And that makes it even more difficult to read, because sometimes letters don't look like letters. It's like looking at a prescription your doctor wrote and you're like, what?
Right.
Yeah, it's really hard. I remember, because I started out in art history as someone who looked at South Asian and Islamic painting. So reading manuscripts and having this like beautiful, very clean calligraphy, it's super, I'm not trying to say it's super easy, but it's easier to read. And then you have an object like this, and it takes you a while because sometimes the letters don't look like the letters would in a manuscript, or it would take me much longer to decipher an inscription than it would on a work on paper. And sometimes you can't even read an inscription at all because you're like, this letter could be 4 different letters, but I just don't know. Or especially if there's losses, like if we're looking at this Bundi Katar, you see there's a little bit of loss on the top line of the inscription. You miss like one or a few letters, and that can throw an entire inscription off. So it creates big challenges in terms of interpreting what these inscriptions are saying.
Yeah, very interesting. I wonder if with the dots, if that was something that was easier to do.
Yeah. I wonder
versus trying to carve out a specific line, right? If you could, like you said, especially in tight space.
Exactly.
Run the string of dots close enough together and then leave the gold enough to make it look like a line instead. I don't know. Exactly.
And I think that was definitely what was used. I think it was a lot easier than trying to cross hatch and then trying to work with this wire in such a small space.
Interesting.
All right. I'm ready for the next one.
This one. So yeah, this in the description at the Met, and maybe this is in general, it says use this weapon to hunt tigers and even crocodile.
Oh yeah, I wrote that description.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, I knew it. I knew it was a little strange. No,
yeah, I know.
So let's talk about that, because you mentioned earlier about hunting. Unless you have a later one that you're going to talk about that fits better with it.
No. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So, the Katar was used as a hunting weapon, particularly in North India and especially in Rajasthan. It was considered a rite of passage to hunt dangerous predators using the Katar, and you would pursue mostly tiger, lion, and even crocodile. But there are depictions of these hunts going successfully and also these hunts going completely wrong. There's a image also at Harvard. It's my favorite painting. So Mark, we're on my favorite paintings, but not favorite weapons.
We just call it Rachel's favorite things. Like
favorite thing, right? Exactly. Exactly. Like you get a Katar, you get Katar. Yes. Look under your seat. There's a Katar. Yeah. Oh man, that would be like the coolest show ever. So
it would be.
Yeah, so there's this painting at Harvard. I'll give you an accession number so you guys can take a look at it. It's 2009.202.39. And it is a hunting scene. It's actually shows a very common way of hunting in Rajasthan. You have this large tree in the center and this kind of platform that is in the tree, and we have a figure that is sitting on this platform, and he's battering a tiger on the head with the butt of his matchlock gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the tiger has been shot, but he's not showing any signs of backing down. You also have this slain calf at the bottom. And so what Rajasthani hunters would do was they would tie a calf, a goat, or a sheep to the base of a tree and leave it out there for days. And they start to cry and bellow, and that attracts a dangerous predator, mostly tigers and lions. And your hunter would be in this platform with his matchlock and would fire from this advantageous point and hopefully hit your predator. But here things have not gone the way that they should have gone. And it obviously shows that this practice, although it gives every advantage to the hunter, did carry a great amount of risk. And we see his attendant kind of scrambling up the tree, and he's holding a Katar as a defensive weapon in his right hand. And I love the fact that his turban is unraveling, kind of showing that panic as he's trying to get up to the platform. And it in this situation, since you're using a firearm, the Katar plays, again, a secondary role here, but it was definitely used as both an offensive and defensive, in this case, weapon in hunting. But then you have these other scenes where you have hunters just with a Katar pursuing a lion or tiger. And because we had talked about this earlier, it's meant to be a weapon that's used at incredibly close range. So it's a mark of one's bravery and martial skill. And that's how you kind of demonstrated your valor and your manliness. Then there's some images that you have of princes and kings hunting crocodile. Like they're in a pool with a Katar and pursuing crocodile. And that's cheating though, because crocodiles were like kind of corralled into these pools. And they were also drugged. They were fed fish that were laced with like sedatives. So they got like sleepy. And I'm like, that's cheating.
Lame.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, there was a painting. It was at the Met, but I believe it's in a private collection. It was on display for an exhibition that I actually helped work on the Royal Hunt in India. So if you had to search for it on the website, it's I would just put in Royal Hunt in India and it comes up, and it has a object checklist. But there's a painting of a Maharaja plunging a Katar into a crocodile, but it's a pool of crocs, and there is documentation that they were actually drugged with sedatives. So not really a demonstration of bravery. I think that's cheating for sure.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this painting today, the tiger scene, and during our last podcast we had, you talked about there not being a lot of documentation. It was passed down word and stuff like that.
Right.
And I was thinking about, like, could some of these paintings also be like, here's a joke on my neighbor, he's kind of a dipshit and can't hunt. So here's, you know what I mean? It's like, we don't have these sort of snapshots of what goes on in life like we do accidentally now. You paint the most exciting thing or the most embarrassing, horrific. It's always these extreme emotions that got put down on paper. And
that's a really bad shot.
Yeah,
Yes.
you know what I mean? It's like
It's like bad.
But
Yes.
there's documentation of them doing that sort of stuff, like as a rite of passage.
Yeah, so there is. And what's interesting about this painting is that you're thinking, God, this guy's an idiot. But it's kind of like this weird reverse psychology in a way, because these paintings were produced to show off the bravery of the hunter. In this case, we have Rao Raja Bhoj Singh of Bundi. He was a member of royalty. He, in fact, was technically a Maharaja. And during his rule, he was basically losing popularity. And this was also during a time where the British were kind of like, oh, hi, we're here. So to show that he was a brave and also a valiant ruler, and also to justify his rule, these paintings were produced to be like, see how brave he is. Like he shot this tiger, but this tiger's not backing down, and neither is he. Like he's doing this really dangerous sport, but he's like, not backing down either. So it was kind of like this weird reverse psychology where instead of showing him triumphant in a hunt, which was a very popular genre of Indian painting, it's kind of shown like in the reverse where you're like, oh my God, he's so brave for having to conquer or try to conquer this tiger that is obviously not, it's seeking revenge in this painting. So I remember when I first saw this painting, I was like, is this kind of a dig at him? But no, he actually commissioned this work of art. There's actually a few other paintings that show him hunting where he has a successful hunt. But this, I think, really encapsulates the panic and the fear that this type of hunting can bring about, and how brave you have to be in case something does go wrong, and that it does carry a great amount of risk, but you're willing to go through that for that valor.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of a pretty great painting.
It is. It's just spectacular.
I want to give props to the guy, not the main guy, but is it a body servant or
Yeah, the attendant that's like
the attendant?
quickly climbing up this tree like, oh shit. And yeah, and still is holding onto this Katar
He's
while
climbing a tree with a Katar. I think
Yes.
that may be one of the more dangerous things.
Yes, exactly.
Or I mean, he's either going to climb the tree with a Katar or go against a tiger. Each seem
Yes.
like poor
Right.
ideas.
Exactly. Exactly. And he has the Katar ready just in case the tiger's like, oh, hey, there's this guy like struggling to climb this tree with one hand.
Yeah.
Easy
I
bait.
would guess that he's climbing down the tree.
Oh, interesting.
Oh.
I would guess if you're tiger hunting, you're both up there because the goat's on the ground.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
I,
interesting. I
that
always
would be
saw
my
it as him
guess.
like trying to climb up.
well,
just
I'm
because
guessing they
of
were
the-
both up there to start. with.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Look at you, Tom. You just redefined the
I know.
narrative.
I know.
Well,
I think I
mean-
need a moment of silence right now. Just like look at
If you're
this painting.
tiger hunting, that's how it works. You're both up in the blind and the goat's on the ground and you're waiting for the tiger. You don't want to be down with the tiger.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, at least that's how they do it in Africa.
Tiger hunting 101.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Anybody
I read,
who hunts a tiger knows.
I read a lot of Peter Hathaway.
Tom did a boar hunt that was that way with a knife, but it was
Really?
kind
Yeah,
of
we've done a few.
assistance.
Yeah, we use dogs,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah, he had furry friends that
They
took
were
care of business.
sedated too.
Birch was on that trip.
Tom, were the hogs sedated with
No. No.
Oh, okay. Is there any
We-
evidence of lack of sedation?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had a dog that got about 100 and some staples.
Ouch.
Oh.
Luckily pulled through, but I brought some staple guns from the ER. But
Oh
Oh
man.
my God.
And they're wearing Kevlar vests and cut collars and all that.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're definitely not sedated. When you crawl in a brush and you're pulling them out by the back leg and they're trying to kill the dogs.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
Crazy.
But a knife is very effective.
Yes.
Yes.
Should have had a Katar.
Yeah.
Yeah. I designed the ultimate boar knife and I didn't design a Katar. I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah. I think the UBK did its job.
Really cool painting.
Yeah, it's a great painting.
All right, so we know more about hunting, as it was like with this thing, like you said, it's a very up close and personal weapon. So I feel like this is a good time to apologize for Weaponar and Buff Patrick. And
I am so excited for her to like talk to one of her doctor friends and she can accidentally say Buff Patrick.
Buff Patrick. Look at that Buff Patrick.
I'm sorry, what?
I meant fleur-de-lis like shape.
Oh gosh, bad influence. It goes a long way, long way.
Yeah, I mean these paintings really help kind of give us insight into how these Katars were used off the battlefield for different practices. Still technically the same, like your quote unquote enemy is this dangerous predator.
Right.
And that concept of the dangerous predator being an enemy was actually a thing in Indian hunting, that you were seeing this animal as something that you were conquering, that you then were conquering nature, and it was kind of this man over nature situation. And what I find really interesting about the practice of the Katar in Rajasthan is that they were warriors. They were a warrior clan. They still are a warrior clan. And the training with a Katar began at such a young age. And I have to mention this because this is one of my favorite, I keep saying this, but it is one of my favorite pieces in our collection at Worcester, and it's a child's Katar. These objects are so rare to survive, but we actually have one. I'll give it the accession number. It's 2014.482.1. And it's tiny. It was meant for a boy that's around 5 to 6 years old. It even has little gold flowers on the crossbar. It's just the cutest thing. And it's definitely has seen some use, because if you see the image, the blade is significantly smaller, and it's also slightly uneven in its hilt. So I thought I would share that the use of the Katar begins at such a young age. So you kind of like learn how to use it and you grow up with it. And then you graduate to larger Katars too.
Right. Can you hit us with that number again? Because I think
absolutely.
I got it wrong.
Yeah, it's 2014.
Okay.
482.1.
Oh yeah, Arms and Armor for Children. Check that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I have to have a talk with my parents and be like, I know I'm not a boy, but why didn't I get a child's guitar?
Come on.
Come on.
So when did their, rite of passage, do you know what age that was sort of looked at, or?
They were around, so your first Katar was usually given to you around 5-6 years old. So this was technically the first Katar that you would start with. And then the rite of passage for hunting usually happened between the ages of 13 to 16. So you're pretty young. Mm. So, I mean, I can't imagine being a 13-year-old going up against a tiger with a Katar. Be like, here you go, kid. Go out there.
Rachel,
get yourself a tiger.
You said you've handled this?
Yes. Yeah.
So was this ever sharpened? Was it meant to be sharp? It looks like it's not.
No, it's not. It was not.
So it's
sharpened.
more like a trainer.
It's a trainer. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. It's like baby's first Katar kind of situation.
Yeah. It makes total sense. I mean, it's a trainer. So we in the tactical industry, we do kind of the same thing. We'll make non-sharp trainers.
Yeah.
Cool. The construction looks different too. It looks like it's actually inset into the handle into two pieces.
It is.
Okay, so how did they train with it? I guess, do you guys know? What did they?
It was mostly used just so you get used to holding them. And they were definitely, I mean, the way that this blade is shaped, it has been reshaped. It did see some use. I have a feeling that whoever owned it kind of knocked the blade on the sides in different places. You know how kids are. Kids these days with their weapons.
Knives.
Yeah, exactly. So there isn't, unfortunately, any documentation of them actually using it on something, but I wouldn't be surprised if they used it on like very soft targets and practiced the thrusting or punching motion. That I can definitely see. But I also think that there's like slight knocks in the blade on the sides, so it definitely was knocked around quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the kids are kids. You're gonna slam it against something,
Right. Right.
Do you think that? Is there any way of that being sort of like, kids having cap guns? It was definitely more of a popular thing when we have soldiers overseas. The kids would have, look what dad does, and look, was there a little bit of that too, or is it all purpose driven?
I think it definitely had an element of play also. I mean, they would have to. Like, kids are all going to be the same, no matter what culture. So I think even just like the signs of the blade being knocked on the sides shows that this kid was probably like hitting it on, something, or dragging it, like as if you had like a stick and you're kind of dragging it across a fence while you're walking.
Right.
I kind of picture this like little kid holding this Katar and just kind of like hitting things as he's like walking around or playing with it, and then getting scolded like, you need to learn how to kill a tiger, young man, that kind of thing.
Less playing, more stabbing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Less fence, more tiger. Let's go.
Exactly. Let's go.
That is a great shirt idea.
Yes.
Yes.
Less play, more stabbing.
Yeah. Mark the maker. Next t-shirt design.
It's our next
Done.
shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
We're
That
so
would be
I
great.
thought
It sells
Really
itself.
We'll use
Buff
Rachel's
Patrick
name.
is gonna be it, but whatever.
It'll be a quote.
Yep.
Can you make it a sweatshirt too? Because I would totally buy it as a sweatshirt.
There you go. Yep.
But it's a
Okay.
car on
Cozy.
it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right, so the child's Katar, we got that. That's very interesting. I think maybe you mentioned this before. I don't remember seeing the picture, so it's definitely cool to see it.
Yeah, it's really small. My hand could barely hold it. I have a photo of me holding this, or I should say hand modeling this, if you will. And my hand is so awkward trying to hold the grip. It's very small.
Yeah.
And I read about children's weapons, but I'd never seen one until I joined Worcester, and I was like, this is so cool. And apparently they made smaller sized swords and other types of daggers as well. But I just haven't come across any other examples other than this one.
Why not wood? Is it the weight?
I wonder if it is the weight, and also just getting used to holding something that is made of steel or iron. I wonder if that had a lot to do with it too.
Because there's still a lot of work. I mean, it's not quite as intricate, but it still has carving or scraping or fullers on it. I mean,
exactly. And the level of decoration on the grip is pretty impressive. It's these tiny gold flowers, and it's beautiful. And we've talked about before how there's no details spared when it comes to South Asian arms and armor, and this is such a great example. Even if it was a child's training Katar, it was still treated with the same kind of care as it would be for an adult's Katar, that it was still decorated with that attention in mind, which I think that's what I love so much about this particular example.
I think, I mean, if the description in the thing that came up, I guess this is actually on Facebook, the part that popped up was a Facebook write-up, and it said aristocratic children. So this wasn't like an average typical kid's
No.
Katar. This is somebody from a very wealthy family.
Exactly.
And they're carrying it to look like they fit in with the very wealthy, powerful family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So nobility and royalty would have been the ones that were, especially royalty, were the ones that were hunting with a Katar. For them, it was really important to demonstrate their legitimacy to rule, that the princes and the kings had the ability to protect their kingdom, and showing that military valor through hunting was incredibly important. So yes, this Katar would have definitely have been carried by a young boy that was part of a royal family, or one that was part of a high-ranking family.
Yeah, that makes
for
sense.
sure.
One, and I would think that there was probably wooden ones also that didn't survive. Your warrior class, or your normal people that are going to use them, they probably had small wooden ones.
Right, exactly. Or if they had ones that they were, training with as a young kid, that metal could have been easily melted down and repurposed to something else. Like, oh, we don't need this. He's grown up now. He's off, to war, killing his tigers.
Right.
So I think, a lot of these were melted down and repurposed.
Yeah, interesting.
I don't know. I'd almost guess not, Rachel. I hate to go against you here, but
oh boy.
I mean, think of the.
Do you know who
think
we're
of the
talking
time
to,
and
Tom?
effort. I'm just saying, the time and effort to build something. You wouldn't destroy it. You might pass it down or sell it or whatever. Repurposing metal that's already had this much work would not really be economically sound.
Yeah,
At one time, it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because of the labor involved in making steel at that time, and it still wasn't a set process. There was a lot of, I hope this block turns out right going on.
Yeah, but you'd sell it to another prince. That's, I don't know. Doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't mean that I'm right. I'm just voicing a question that popped.
You may have national treasured the tiger print, but I don't know about this one.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
steel, Michael, you can't just take a blade and simply reforge it. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, that was a conundrum.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, I just had a question.
No.
This is how things get figured out and thought about.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I agree. You're spending all this time crafting something. Why would you then melt it down and repurpose it? But
Right.
I'm also thinking that if it wasn't royalty or nobility, and they were making, not as involved children's Katars, like they're not designed or decorated with gold, I would be more inclined to think that they could be repurposed, especially if, you need it for something else. And also very little of these survive, which makes me wonder then, were they repurposed? Because this is the only one that I have ever come across.
I would guess there was never many to start with. Just like I think in the New York Met, there's a small child's set of armor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing there wasn't a whole lot of small child sets of full plate armor made.
That I wouldn't know, but I've come across more child sets of armor than I have child's Katars.
Right.
So that's one thing. And I can guess, armor is much more involved. So I wouldn't think that you would want to melt that down. And I'm not saying that making a Katar isn't, but it just seems like I would be more inclined to melt down a child's Katar than melt down a full suit of child's armor.
I mean, you can't really melt it down. It would have to be reforged, and then I don't know.
Depends on what you're going to do with it, I guess. But
yeah.
Okay. Well, that's all for controversy hour. No, I'm just kidding. I'm teasing.
Dun, 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 dun.
Okay. All right. So we are 2 in plus the child's Katar. Where are we going next?
I think we'll go to maybe the earliest group of Katars, because we didn't really touch on that. We kind of just jumped to fun stuff. But the earliest Katars are pretty cool and really kind of show off that skill and virtuosity that you find with Katars. There are 2 groups from South India. The earliest is known as the Vijayanagar group. That's because it's affiliated with the southern Indian region / kingdom of Vijayanagar. And these Katars are, and I'll pull up an accession number for you guys. This is at the Met. It's 36.25.905. And this is, your standard Vijayanagar Katar. You have this really strongly tapered, beautiful blade has just deep fullers that parallel the shape of the blade. You have a hood that acts as a knuckle guard, and it usually terminates in the head of a naga or a snake. And hooded Katars, you don't find those in North India. This is a very much a Southern Indian characteristic. And the Vijayanagar group loosely dates to around the 16th century. This is when you really start to see a proliferation of Katars being created. So, as I said earlier, we're not sure exactly when the Katar was produced or introduced to India. It is an original Indian weapon, but we have no idea when it kind of came to be. But this group is the earliest identifiable group and where we will really start to see that proliferation of Katar production.
Yeah.
Look at those fullers.
The fullers and the guard, that cobra guard is super cool.
It is. This is a beautiful example. This is like a prime example of a Vijayanagar Katar.
Wow.
Man, not to be sacrilegious, but am I the only one catching kind of Art Deco flavor off that guy?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, so it's not just me.
No. Yeah, it definitely has like an Art Deco-esque, especially with like the way those fullers kind of go deep into the point. It's just a stunning piece.
Well, it really is.
And then the loop around the back guard at the rear of the tines.
Yeah.
That's almost like a puzzle. How did we get it on here? I don't know. We're not going to tell.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is our first kind of foray into early modern Katars. And then we have the next group, which I think is my personal favorite because it really is all about the like showing off. It's known as the Thanjavur group. That's because they're also from South India. They're from Thanjavur or Tanjore in Tamil Nadu. They date between the 17th and 18th century. And one of my favorite examples is also from the Met. The Met actually has the largest collection of Thanjavur Katars outside of India. So that's my fun factoid for this evening. The accession number is 36.25.1018. And these Katars are characterized by these incredibly elaborate knuckle guards. They show off like all different types of decorative techniques, chiseling, piercing, embossing, engraving. And I just love how the artisan has kind of transformed the steel into having this like lace-like effect with this example. It's just absolutely beautiful. What's interesting about the Thanjavur group is that the majority of the Katars from this group have repurposed European blades. That's what I find super interesting.
Is that what this has?
Yes, this one has a repurposed European blade.
Okay.
Check that out.
I was about to comment.
Look at the side picture, though. Look at how thick that friggin' tip is.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's that. Say the blade isn't as elaborate. The handle is.
Yes.
But the blade is definitely not like what we've seen before.
No, it's not. This Francesca and I have had many conversations about this group because of the use of a repurposed European blade. A lot of people think like, oh, of course they use a European blade because like they couldn't make such great blades like Europe. It's a very Western centric way of thinking, but that's not the case. These Katars that belong to this group were very much about showing off the artistic skill of the knuckle guard, and they were meant for ceremonial purposes. Like this was not going to battle. So it's still technically a functional weapon, but you're not going to be using the blade, so might as well repurpose it from other types. Also, it is in a way a status marker because it's like, see, I have a European blade. It's so a way of saying like it's worldly or cultured, or you're part of that cross-cultural exchange that was happening in India at the time. And that is usually an indicator of you're moving in the, the right circles, so to speak.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Social status thing.
Exactly.
Very
exactly.
interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, I can talk about these forever. There's another one that I would love to show you guys. It is, let's see, also from the Met. It is 36.25.1008. And I love this one. It's just so beautiful. This kind of reminds me, this is like an one-up on a Vijayanagar Katar because you have this like hooded cobra kind of looming over on the knuckle guard. And then you have these two adorsed mythological figures of yalis. They're these lion-like creatures of Hindu mythology. They're seen as guardian figures because they usually adorn the entrances to South Indian temples. So you have this combination of kind of like this cobra, also a very protective, very powerful animal, and then these mythological guardian. So it has almost a talismanic quality to it.
And that's the same creature that's on the sides of the handles or the guards that go up the sides as well, it almost looks like.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's another really great one. And then
this one's interesting because it has a very thin blade in both profiles, right? It's very daggery and slim.
Yes.
Which fits. This is a European repurposed as well?
Yeah, it's a rapier blade.
I was going to say, okay.
Yep. Yeah, that has been repurposed.
Okay. The other one, the previous one, had that armor-piercing kind of shape where it was heavy at the tip. So was that put in later, do you think? Or was that part of...
I was wondering that.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen a European weapon with a reinforcement like that at the point.
Yeah, I wonder if that was put in later.
Yeah, maybe so.
But God, it was gorgeous, man. I mean, it was so much fatter than the rest of the blade. It looked like a plumb bob, like a plumb bob hanging from a string.
But you get that through chainmail, you're not getting it back out. I don't know.
Yeah. So this was definitely, again, not for combat at all. So it would just have been tucked into your waist sash or what's called a putka. So that way you could show off the hilt. And it's kind of like what we were talking about in the previous episode that we all did together, where you have these objects that were meant as status symbols at court, and that the hilt was really that indicator of status because it had all the decoration. It was made of these really precious materials, and this is no different. It's just all steel, which I think is in its own way even more impressive, being able to make it look like lace. Or I'll give you another example. There's so many. Let's see.
That cobra head is badass.
Isn't it?
Oh, yeah, man.
Yeah. So
I need that for my evil lair.
Oh, yeah. 36.25.1010. And that has amazing piercing work where instead of lace, the knuckle guard looks like this flourish of feathers. It's just
like a peacock or something.
Yeah, exactly. So to be able to kind of manipulate steel in that way, I find that to be just sometimes even more impressive than the jewel-studded objects.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, and these artisans also took these works a step further. There's another one that I will share with you guys. It's also, again, at the Met. It's 36.25.1027. And this, I think, it's just such a cool weapon. It obviously would not have been used. You have this Katar with these two side daggers, which are known as bichwas. Mark, this is like the other favorite weapon of mine. A bichwa, that literally translates from Hindi to scorpion sting. Yeah. Because the narrow recurved blade resembles a scorpion sting. It's a sneaky dagger. It's meant to be concealed in your sleeve or in your waist sash. Huh. And usually it has this really nice looped handle that is meant to fit snugly around the palm, so you don't have to worry about dropping it if, for instance, you're grappling somebody. It will just kind of hang off of your hand. And here you have this Katar with not one, but two bichwas riveted to the hilt. It kind of looks like angel's wings in a way.
Yeah.
And then that's not even the coolest part. You have the blades for the bichwas are Indian. The main kind of Katar blade, that's European. And then you have these two adorist yali heads. But the coolest part is the yalis have their mouth agape and their tongues out, and the tongues move.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Yes.
What?
They move. And almost always
Check
like,
that out.
yeah. Every time I see a weapon from South India, from Tanjavur that has a yali, I'm like, does the tongue move? And it most like 98% of the time the tongue moves. I'm like, these artisans
Wow.
are just like crazy. Yeah.
It's like a signature thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
So the blade, this is another repurposed blade, right?
Yes.
Because it looks like it's Latin.
Yes.
That's on there? Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Most of these
Dominantly.
repurposed European blades come from Spain and also from Germany.
Okay. This one's definitely in that put it in your waistband and show off the craziness at the top kind of mode.
This is like just crazy.
Wow.
Also, I just feel like I'm like an incredibly clumsy person. How I work on arms or armor, I have no idea. But like, this is something that I would not carry.
No.
I can just imagine myself totally injuring myself before I even get to court. Like, oh man.
Right. All I
Anyone
did
have
was
a
reach
Band-Aid? Yeah.
across the table for that bowl of mac, and there, boom,
And then boom.
stuck one of these in my elbow.
Exactly. Exactly.
Butter my toast.
Yes.
Right. Take out the person next to you at the table. Oops.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But if you got good with it, you could butter 3 pieces of toast at once.
Ah.
I was thinking.
Something
yes.
to strive for.
I'm not sure, and I guess it's maybe this this part of India, or maybe because these are a specific thing. I don't remember seeing many Katars that have this kind of basket guard kind of thing on them. Is that typical?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. This kind of knuckle guard or hooded knuckle guard is really distinct to South India.
Okay.
So the North Indian ones don't have a knuckle guard, as you saw from the Bundi example.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems to only be a South Indian characteristic.
Okay.
And is it later?
They usually, well, because the Vijayanagar ones have them, and the earliest we can date them is maybe I would say the mid-late 16th century. And then they just continue into the 18th century under Hindu kingdoms. By the time we have Indo-Islamic courts in the early modern period, like the Deccan Sultanates, for example, who ruled central South India, it's a group of 5 Indo-Islamic kingdoms. We then see kind of the influence of North Indian Katars on the region. So the knuckle guards kind of disappear after a while.
It's almost like a European flavor, not just with the repurposed blade, but
Yes.
just also the design.
Yeah. Yes.
You lose some of the, I don't know, some of the looks, I guess. They're gorgeous, but you lose what was before, or in some of the northern ones, it
Yes.
seems like,
Yeah.
look to them.
You're like
Yeah.
a European basket guard on a sword. It's what you're thinking of. That it's got a lot of that
Very
flavor.
Toledo.
Yes, I agree completely. And even when the first time I saw the one with the 2 bichwa daggers attached to it, I even thought that knuckle guard, the shape, and even the adorst yalis has such a European look to it.
Yeah.
It just reminded me of crests that you find in Europe. So I always found that really interesting. And you're right, it does definitely have this European flavor to it, for sure.
So in this time frame, I mean, these are a little bit later than some of the earlier pieces we looked at.
Mm-hmm.
There's European influence in the region,
Oh, absolutely.
obviously. So Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe that, like you said, there maybe some of this is as much about stylized showing off my Euro influenced tastes
Yes.
or whatever.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, at this time period, we have Portuguese, we have Dutch, we have British are trickling in. There's a lot of influences coming into the region. And you see that with painting in India, where they're adapting European motifs and trying to kind of expand their repertoire. And I feel like it's no different for Arms and Armor either.
It'd be natural, right? For this to come as well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. There's a sword that is called a firangi. It's a derivation of Arabic for al-Farangi, which literally translates to Frank, which is a reference to a foreigner from Western Europe, especially from Germany. And those swords have repurposed European blades, and they really show that kind of like blending of local indigenous versus European material coming in. And what's so interesting is that the firangi became such a important sword for cavalry, but if they could not get repurposed European blades, they would import blades from Germany, and they would also create imitation European blades when they couldn't source them, which I thought was really interesting. So that's a little bit later, around the 18th and 19th century, but this kind of fashioning of European influences in an Indian context was very much happening throughout India and also throughout different time periods.
Yeah, flowing in over time. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I had to do a quick look because it seems like sometimes, or a lot of times, that your art, your modern art, whatever it is, be it, drawings or knives or whatever, they follow architecture. And I'm looking at some of the temples that were being done in southern India, and you can see some of the resemblance in the cutouts and the flow.
Oh,
it's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the yalis are taken from South Indian temple architecture. So you'll definitely see that having influences.
Okay. You're talking about the lines, Michael, that we thought kind of reminded us of Art Deco kind of stuff. You're talking about those sort of shapes?
Yeah, I was looking at the Dobasapa Temple in Dambol district. And I was just curious if there was a correlation there. I'll send you guys
It makes sense that there's iconography that's going to carry across
from
a design perspective. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's just, again, to the point of, how embedded South Asian arms and armor was into South Asian visual culture as a whole.
Yeah.
That they were borrowing not only techniques from jewelry, for example, but motifs or different types of decoration from other genres like architecture.
Very interesting.
Yeah. I have one more Tanjavur Katar, if you guys will humor me, because it's really cool. The accession number, again, at the Met is 36.25.1009.
36.25.1009. Oh, wow. This is a crazy one, too.
Yeah. This one's, I feel like I said this multiple times now, Mark. This one's my favorite.
It flows like that's very organic for.
It is. And that hilt, that the yalis with the piercing work is very architectural. It's very much deriving from temples that you find in South India, especially the piercing work that you'll find on the walls or decorating windows, for example, in Indian architecture in general, but especially in South India too. But that knuckle guard that is in this form of this large peacock is just spectacular.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Am I the only one catching a Virgil England vibe off that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's a good observation.
So we have this maker that we've talked about on the show lots of times. He's what's the right way to describe his style, Sean? It's kind of a
fantasy.
Science fantasy.
Science
Organic,
fantasies,
though.
yeah,
It's
but very
a lot
Yeah.
of curves, a lot of. If you could grow a knife in
Mhm.
nature, that's what it would look like.
Nice.
he
Or an alien dropped one off.
right.
That too.
He does very interesting stuff. Well, I'll text you some links to some of his stuff to check out. But
Yeah,
that's,
please do.
that's what Sean's thinking about with this. I can definitely see what you're talking about, Sean. It's a lot of the same kind of flavor in here.
Is there something specific with the peacock? Because
So
I would
glad you
not
asked that. Yes.
think
yes.
the peacock was, military.
Yeah, it is actually, which is crazy. So the peacock is so Hindu deities usually have a vehicle, and a vehicle is usually obviously an animal. It's not, like a Ferrari, but there's a god named Kartikeya. He's also known as Skanda, Murugan, or Kumara. So he has quite a few names, but his vehicle is a peacock, and Kartikeya is the war general of the Hindu pantheon. So the peacock is definitely associated with war. And what's interesting is this peacock, and I know it's kind of difficult to see from the images on the website, it looks like it's holding reins. It's two snakes, and it's supposed to represent the controlling one's ego. The snakes usually represent your ego. And anything that's holding or grappling a snake or controlling a snake means that you are in control of yourself and of your ego. So that's
Check that out.
Yeah.
I thought reins, when it first came up, I thought, does it have reins? Like someone,
Yes.
like you're riding it? And then I thought, okay, no, it's some kind of, like whisker kind of things coming off its nose, but they look kind of thick. But no, snakes that, you can see
Yeah.
the tails when you can zoom in
The
on
tails
the
and the
face of
beak. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Check out the sell some Katar I got. It proves I've got no ego.
Yeah.
I've got my ego in check.
Exactly. Got my ego in check. I have this giant peacock that's mounted on my guitar with a European blade. So, I'm cultured
I
like
see
that
you're
too.
carrying a child's guitar. That's cool too, I guess.
Right. If you're into that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I had one of those, but then my dad got a job.
Wow.
On the side brace, what is that creature at the top?
That's also a yali. That's another. Yalis take on really interesting forms. They're supposed to be these lion-like creatures, but they also have, according to different descriptions, they have bird-like claws, or sometimes they have a bird-like beak. I'm trying to think of the Greek equivalent.
Chimera?
Yeah, there you go.
Chimera.
Thank you. Yes, it's kind of chimera-like.
Because I got weird teeth. I've seen this before on some other stuff, and the mouse on these things kind of freak me out.
Yeah, sometimes they're shown with the noses of an elephant, and then they have fangs, which is
Yeah.
really a odd and also frightening combination. And sometimes they're difficult to tell the difference between a yali and a makara. A makara is like a crocodile creature of Hindu mythology.
Okay.
And there are times where I'm like, this is definitely a yali. And then I'm like, no, it's not. It's a makara. And actually, Mark, you reminded me of that when you had mentioned that Ankus from the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, that gorgeous all steel elephant goad.
Yeah.
And there are yalis and makaras decorating that.
Yeah, that
it's
thing
also
is
South Indian.
Freaky.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are times where I was like, that is a makara? Yell? Either one?
Yalis have big eyes too. That seems to be a very consistent theme, like huge eyes.
Big, it's kind of odd looking elephant-like snout, fangs. They usually have they have a long tongue. Their bodies are usually lion-like. Sometimes their feet, though, terminate into hooves. I think it just depends on how they're being interpreted or how they're being depicted, but they seem to follow a general type, but they definitely don't look like what you would think a lion would look like. It's definitely a mashup of different types of animals, but they're considered to be a lion mythological creature.
Yeah.
Is there Is there any significance to the fish under the feet there? And then at the bottom, it looks like there's another bird. And then the piercing almost reminds me of a feather from a peacock.
Yeah, it totally does. I think the piercing work definitely echoes the feathers of a peacock for sure. And I also, as a side note, love how the feathers are treated on the actual peacock with the pierced work, and then kind of this like really nice engraved, stylized feather decoration. The fish end up being on quite a few different South Indian Katars. And to be honest, I'm not sure what they mean. I wonder if they also have a talismanic purpose. But this is not the first time that I have come across fish on a Katar, especially.
Huh.
That's something I should probably make as my next rabbit hole for research.
Duck at the bottom, maybe.
Yeah, and ducks, other and gooses or geese. Wow! It's time for me to get off now. Wow. Okay. Goodbye.
You finally got on our level.
Yeah.
Both
We brought her
Patrick and
down.
Geeses.
And geese.
We
and
succeeded.
Goosies. Yeah. So
Now I have to point out there was a duck, goose.
Yes.
So somebody needs to be running.
yes, exactly. So they're geese as well, and I don't think that they had any significance other than just to be a decorative motif. You also find this on North Indian examples too, of not just Katars, but also swords, guns. Like we have a really lovely matchlock gun in our collection from Rajasthan that has inlaid ivory duckies on them, and these really giant flowers. It's really cute, actually. But I think they just have this the motif of using nature, and this could be a whole other podcast episode, but the use of animal motifs definitely has a significance in South Asian art for sure.
Yeah.
Do you think it has anything to do with like the fish? I mean, for like just health and prosperity, just like
That's actually what I thought, Michael.
just
I was wondering.
food. It seems like that's used quite a bit.
Yeah,
Another-
it could be. The other thing is that, and this is more of a Mughal motif. So we've talked about the Mughals before. They were the greatest Indo-Islamic empire to rule India. They ruled from 1524 to 1857. One of the military insignia is a fish. And that's because a fish cannot be tamed. So it's like, no, you can't control a fish. You can't tame one. So it became a really popular military emblem, and it was adapted later by the Nawabs of Lucknow and also by the Deccan Sultanates. But I don't think it had the same type of symbolism as it did for these Hindu Katars. So
maybe they're just easy to carve.
Carve, yeah, or
let's add a couple fish here.
Yeah, and or maybe it's kind of along the same lines as the ducks and the gooses, and the gooses, and maybe it's just a really easy natural motif to
add a couple fishes and
fishes, and then we're good to go. Yeah.
Yeah. I swore Rachel was going to throw down the Bob Ross. It's like, it's not unlike when they would add a happy little tree over here.
We'll add some happy little gooses.
Yeah, gooses.
Yeah.
So how far south in India are we talking about?
So right now we're in Tamil Nadu, which is pretty far south.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I got my map ready for this episode because I'm like, I'm shamefully hip to Indian geography. So
there's a lot to cover. Tamil Nadu is the southernmost. Well, Kerala is, but it's one of the southernmost states. Kerala and Tamil Nadu, so we're really down south.
Yeah,
and it's super hot too. So
okay, very interesting.
So, and you can see just from the examples that we took a look at how different they are to their northern counterparts.
Yeah, very, very, certainly more elaborate.
Yes.
And even, like you said, structurally different instead of the more straight shapes of the handle supports to these, being part of a very decorative design.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing that seems to stay constant is the actual handle holes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. The general shape is there for Katars from South India and North India, but there are definitely distinct variations that you find on these groups for sure.
This has been quite the lesson.
It has.
Yeah. And I mean, we can even from here, at this point, we can talk about just the variations that you find with Katars, because it's such not only a versatile weapon, but a versatile shape. It's the perfect base for building up on, as these Tanjavur examples demonstrate. But even just you get variations of the Katar. And my favorite is the scissors Katar. That I think is the coolest thing ever. So I have an accession number. We have one in our collection at Worcester, and then we have another one that I would love for us to take a look at from the Met. We'll look at the one from Worcester first. It's 1917.58. The scissors Katar is a Katar where the blade splits into 3. The most common scissors Katar is this one at the Worcester Art Museum, where you have this blade that splits in half to reveal a blade in the center. And the way in which it's activated is through a spring in the hilt. So basically, when you squeeze the crossbars, it activates the spring that pops the blade into half and allowing for that center blade to be revealed.
Yeah, I think you posted a picture before, right? Of holding this with the blades deployed or opened.
Yes. Yeah. And I think at some point I probably posted a video. This one was really hard. The springs were not very easy to kind of release the blades. And the Met has another one that is interesting. It's a variation type of blade. The accession number is 36.25.737. And I posted this on as part of a fleet of Katars, getting super excited for our podcast on Monday. And that blade, it splits into 3 with 2 blades that kind of come off the center blade on the sides, which is, this one's really interesting. Like I said, the Worcester one's a much more popular form of the scissors Katar, but this one, it automatically reminded me of a European parrying dagger.
Yeah.
It's the Katar version the Katar version of Kurgan's sword.
Yeah.
Just thinking the exact thing.
Yeah. And there's so many legends that surround the scissors Katar. There's one where somebody had once told me that they're meant to be thrusted into your opponent's face, so the 2 outer blades hit the person's eyes and the center blade hits their forehead or the nasal guard of their helmet, which makes absolutely no sense. Like if you're in combat, you're not like, okay, hang on, just stay still so I can stab you in your face. Yeah, exactly. So like, they're wearing their armor. They have a helmet on that has, an aventail or a coat of mail that kind of covers up the forehead with a nasal guard. And then like you're trying to hit their eyes and then also hit this nasal guard just perfectly. And it leaves your entire side of your body exposed, which by the time you get this all lined up, I'm pretty sure you've already met your demise. So that theory doesn't really work.
Have you considered a Three Stooges scenario?
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yes. No, I have not. But yes, that would.
But thank you for your suggestion. I'm very polite.
But thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, that would actually be a really interesting Stooges episode.
Good God.
It's like, Pearly, are you still there? Yeah.
Buff Patrick is a special guest on that.
Yeah,
That's
Buff
a-
Patrick for
Buff
sure.
Patrick is on this one if you look at it
Yes,
up
Buff
close.
Patrick
He
is right
is.
there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what is above Buff Patrick? Is that the face, onward face of the deity you were talking of earlier?
I don't think
That's a good question.
so. I'm not sure.
Because I'm looking at big eyes, but I don't know if I'm...
Oh,
I don't
I see
know.
the face you're seeing. Yeah, it almost looks like a beak with almost like a handlebar mustache and then like dark eyes behind it.
Yeah.
Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah.
I don't know that that's designed to be a face, but it definitely has that look to it.
It definitely does, but I don't think
Oh,
it's
maybe it's
supposed to
not.
be a face. Yeah.
Oh.
Now I can't unsee the face.
Yeah, it looks
No.
like a demon face kind of.
Yes,
right.
exactly. Exactly.
Oh, this is very Lovecraftian face. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna go ahead and say that out loud.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh-huh. And what's on the sides of it? Right above were the two side scissors.
Oh, those are again your other Buff Patricks. They're just kind of like
Oh,
wrapped around
okay.
on the side.
Additional
Yeah.
Buff Patricks.
It's like a trio of Buff Patricks.
And I'm assuming when this is closed, the middle, not a fuller, but it's a
Mhm.
Spine,
Oh.
right?
spine.
Yeah.
Medial
Hits-
ridge.
The medial
Thank you.
ridge.
Thank
Yes.
you. Hits the edge, and then that
Yep.
flows into
Yes,
the bottom. So
exactly.
boy, I bet it looks really cool closed.
It's super seamless when it's closed.
Question on this one. It looks like on the right side there's like a lever. Is this spring operated versus the other one you had to squeeze the grip?
Yeah, so this one, I think this one has that lever looks like it's actually for the scabbard or the sheath where it kind of just kind of
Ah,
rests right on top and it catches. I don't think that that's for the actual blades because that would be quite difficult to be able to maneuver. You'll need, if you're gripping this, you'll need your other hand to
So you
definitely
have to-
activate it.
So so these are closed. You don't squeeze to open, right? It springs open
You squeeze the crossbar to open it and it springs
even
open.
on this one. Okay.
Yeah, even on this one.
You can see the bottom's loose, or it's not loose,
Yeah.
but you can see a gap, and then something which you haven't seen is touching.
Right.
So that must be
Yeah,
what
they're touching, so-
activates.
the lever or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still,
Interesting. On the one to the left of it, you have the fish motive in the handguard.
To the left of it. What do you mean, Tom?
are you talking
On her, I'm looking at her Instagram. Sorry, she posted.
Oh.
a photo.
Yes. So that one was actually produced, I think, in just at the cusp of the time where the Deccan Sultanates were taking over. And so that definitely was more of a military insignia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So just for the record, that post on your Instagram is crazy because you have like a curved blade, the scissor blade, a regular blade, and then a kris.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
crazy grouping.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and it just kind of shows that diversity that you get with the Katar. Like, yes, it has a very simple shape, but look at the range of what you can get with that.
Oh yeah, I've been blown away. I bought some of the books that you recommended, and talk about a rabbit hole.
Yes, I know. They're just it. The Katar itself is just such a like font of like crazy cool things, and then you go into other aspects of South Asian weaponry, and you're like, oh my god, it just keeps getting better, and you just continue to fall down these glorious rabbit holes.
So
I mean,
was the
just the
scissor-
very nature of the Katar makes it easy to, if you're making one, to just be like, well, we'll try this. Why the hell not?
Exactly. And I feel like that's what the scissors Katar actually is for. There's another legend where, you're up against an opponent or prey, and you thrust the Katar into their kind of abdomen area, and that's when you grip the crossbar. The spring releases the blades, and you're causing this maximum internal damage. And then you pull the Katar out, and all the guts spill out, and it's like a very, very theatrical theory, but I also don't think that that's very practical. I honestly think, based on our conversations, Francesca and I, that this is most likely a object that it could have been used as a parrying dagger, but we mostly think that it was just made out of just like, hey, look what I can do with this shape. And this was produced at a time where other Katars were being created for this same reason, like the Katar with the 2 flintlocks. That's another favorite of mine. So I will give you the accession number for one of them. This is at the Royal Collection Trust. And hopefully it shows up. Their website sometimes, don't tell Francesca this. Well, she'll probably hear this, but love you, Francesca. Their website is really sometimes difficult. But the accession number is 11455. And this is a beautiful example of a flintlock Katar. So basically 2 flintlocks are integrated on either side of the crossbars. The trigger is in an interesting place too. It's kind of like on the inside, right where your knuckles are touching the blade. So I'm not sure how that would exactly work, but technically these would have been functional, but they were most likely just to show off one's ingenious technical skill in creating these.
Yeah, this is a challenging website. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's a difficult website.
I don't know that I've seen the picture of this one before.
Yeah. The other one is, and I can pull up another one.
Mine finally pulled up.
Are they gilt handles or is...
Of course they are, Mark. Cash. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. They're gilt. They also have rubies and emeralds.
Oh.
Set in them in the Kundan technique.
Nice.
Yeah, there's ruby and emeralds in the crossbars as well.
Wow.
Yeah, so this one was actually presented to King Edward VII when he was Prince of Wales, and this was given to him during his tour of India. And so this one was definitely meant to be like this is a cool, technical, innovative object, a souvenir, if you will, from India.
Yeah.
There's another one that's at the Royal Ontario Museum. The accession number is 948.1.124, and that one has more of a utilitarian feel. It's not heavily gilt in gold. The flintlocks are kept in steel. And what's interesting about this one is that the triggers sit on the outside of the crossbars, just above where your wrist kind of hits. And those would have been impossible to press without, the aid of your other hand. Yeah. So there are aspects of these that are like, and it wouldn't, technically, yes, they would work, but not really.
Right. More like you said, capability demonstration, or look how skilled our craftsmen are. Or... Exactly.
And look at how we can integrate a modern weapon such as flintlocks into a indigenous Indian weapon.
Oh yeah, so those are the triggers at the back behind the grip.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Those little buttons that you see. Yes.
Definitely a statement piece.
Oh, for sure. And I feel like these pieces were created I feel like it's almost in the European sense, where you have these artisans that were at this time creating these incredible works like automata, for example, to show off kind of the virtuosity of not only the artisan, but the environment in which they were able to produce it, a wealthy, powerful kingdom. And I feel like it was very much the same thing in an Indian context too, that you have these guilds that were able to employ these ingenious, incredibly talented craftsmen, and that it signifies the prosperity and the wealth and the power of your kingdom, that they were being able to create these kind of fascinating works of art.
No, that's, the capability of your kingdom. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So scissors, flintlocks, all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah, yeah. The bichwas,
Right.
sneaky side daggers. There's a lot of really cool things that just grew out of the shape of the Katar.
Yeah.
What about the combined guitar? Is that anything you study at all, or is that pretty rare?
The combined Katar with like different weapons, or
Yeah, like there was a picture I pulled up of a tall war with the.
oh yes, with a Katar. Yes. So I haven't really looked into a lot of combination weapons, but that's something that I would like to explore further, especially with regard to how they demonstrate this technical virtuosity of a guild or of a single craftsman. And I really think that a lot of these were being produced kind of at a time where also there was a lot of trade and exchange. So having that, and a lot of these objects started hitting European markets in the mid 19th century. So creating these one of a kind kind of ingenious things that represent your kingdom or your region was a means of showing off in a way. So I think a lot of the combination objects that, yes, they're technically functional, but there are aspects of them like this flintlock Katar, for example, where you're like, this would not have been practical.
Yeah.
There are other examples too of like integrated firearms. Like there's the Royal Ontario Museum has a whip that has a integrated, I think it's a matchlock in the haft of the whip. There's a spearhead with an integrated flintlock. So these were being produced, I think, simply just to show off that skill. But technically with a talwar, or I've seen the Royal Armories in Leeds, I think they have a combination weapon of a kanda, and a broadsword, a double-edged broadsword, and a Katar in one, where like the Katar kind of sits in a sheath, and I think it's an open sheath at the base of the hilt of the kanda. So like, I guess it's like almost a 2-for-1 weapon. And like I said, Katars were usually paired with other weapons. So if that had to go to combat, that seems a little bit more practical, if that makes sense. Because then you can just pull your Katar out of its sheath, and then you have a kanda in one hand and a Katar in the other.
Okay.
And you're looking cool.
So they were like piggyback together, kind of?
Yeah, they're piggyback together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's almost like a Japanese katana and wakizashi set kind of thing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Check that out.
Yeah, so that seems a little bit more practical, especially since the use of a broadsword and a Katar was something that you could definitely use on battle. But this flintlock thing is impractical in many ways.
Right. Low on practicality, high on badass.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And when you're holding it, I mean, you feel totally badass. And even if it makes absolutely no sense from a technical perspective, it's still such a cool thing.
It's still Rachel's favorite. A theme people may have noticed by now.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, how many favorites does she?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I thought a favorite only meant you had one favorite, not 40.
That's the approach quitters have, Rachel.
Yeah, exactly.
Limiting yourself to one favorite.
Exactly.
So I'm looking back at your Instagram post that had the 4 in it from a little while ago. And so Tom mentioned the fact that one of them has a Chris style, like with a wavy edge going down. Do you know if this piece was late and again, cross-cultural influence would lead to that, or did that come out of India with that kind of shape?
It came out of India with that kind of shape. The wavy bladed Katar was a South Indian variant of your standard Katar. So I'm glad you brought that up. You do get ones that like are totally wavy, like they look like a snake almost.
Yeah.
And that blade can be as long as about 3.5 feet. So that's pretty long. Again, you're not using that. But it just shows, again, the versatility of the Katar shape. This particular one with the wavy blade that I posted, that is a pretty early one. It's 17th to 18th century. It's part of our Tanjavur group, although it does not have your hooded knuckle guard. This was kind of later in that group where the knuckle guard kind of disappears, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
As soon as you start seeing the Indo-Islamic influences that were coming in and North Indian influences, especially that of the Mughals, coming into the region. Another really cool feature about that is just I love the kind of lace-like crossbar that it has too. Totally impractical. You won't be able to hold that properly. But I just love that it again shows that kind of what you can do with your very fundamental shape of this weapon.
Yeah, and it carries that piercing thing that was there on the other South Indian guitars. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's a great one. I was about to say it's one of my favorites, but I'm trying to change up my
So I wonder
terms here.
Yeah, right. It's a really great one too.
It's great. I love it.
I wonder. You got to wonder about that shape. Maybe that's just a thing that would happen. It would organically happen in multiple places. Tom, when we talked about the Chris stuff before, where did we conclude that came from? Maybe we talked about it in the Ethnic Knives episode.
I think it's Indonesia.
Okay, so maybe there is some kind of, I don't know. That would be interesting to know. Chicken or the egg, where did it come from first? Right. Or was there someone that saw something like that and said, oh, we should do that with a guitar?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or, I don't know.
There's a treatise on different types of blade making in India. It's called the Brihat Samhita. It's a Sanskrit treatise that talks about the nature of blades. And it talks about wavy blades and how the number of waves will tell you if it's a good sword or a bad sword, or a good blade or a bad blade. Right. And I believe it was odd numbers are good and even numbers are not good. So there's definitely a presence of wavy bladed weapons that originated in India, especially since this treatise mentions it, and it's a pretty early treatise. I can't remember off the top of my head when it was written, but there's a whole section on auspicious versus inauspicious blades, and it specifically mentions wavy blades, which is really interesting.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah. And I believe the Chris has, and you guys probably know way more than I do because Southeast Asia is not an area that I look at too much unless it's Islamic. But the Chris blade, I also believe the number of waves, too, even or odd, tells you whether it's a good or bad, or if it's talismanic or auspicious or inauspicious. But the same
for sure does. I don't know what it is, but yeah.
Yeah. So the same kind of concept also existed in India too.
Yeah. Numerology is a thing that's very cross-cultural, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I mean, not always meaning the same thing, but numbers mattering or being lucky or...
Right. Or odd versus even. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Rachel, did you have other stuff that you wanted to teach us about the guitar? Or are we wrapping it up?
We can totally, I can talk about this stuff forever. So, I mean,
do you really want to leave that door open, Mark?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the other thing that I would mention is just that, you get also these, well, we're on the topic of talismanic. There's some really great talismanic guitars too. I'll probably end with this one. It's one of my favorites. It's from the Met. It's the accession number is 36.25.949. And this is one of those, like, it's all about the hilt weapons. This was, I think, one of the first weapons I saw while I was a fellow there. And that's when I was like, aside from the blinged out sword that I talked about in the last episode, this was one of those where I was like, man, this stuff is just so cool.
Wow.
So this is a South Indian Katar. It was produced sometime between the 17th and 18th century. The blade is European, so it's a repurposed blade, but in this case, it's all about the hilt. The hilt has the 10 avatars or avatars of the Hindu god Vishnu. Vishnu is one of the gods of the Hindu Trimurti or Trinity, which has Brahma, the creator, Shiva, the destroyer. And although that sounds like it has negative connotations, Shiva destroys for purification and making way for positive change.
Right.
And Vishnu is known as the preserver. He maintains cosmic balance, he protects the universe, and he also has 10 incarnations. And the hilt here has those 10 incarnations, 5 on each side, carved beautifully into the hilt. And then, of course, super cash, gilt in gold.
Right.
And it's just such a beautiful Katar. I like that, just the level of detail, the way you can easily identify each of the avatars. For example, I'm looking on their website right now. I'm looking at the 4th image in, and it's a detail. The top figure is his first incarnation, which is Matsya. Matsya is the fish. So you can see that the lower half of the body is that of a fish.
Oh, yeah.
Kurma, the turtle, is the next one. So he has kind of like this shell-like lower part of his body. Varaha is the boar. So the next one has a boar head on a human body. And it goes on, and it's just a spectacular weapon. And this was definitely used for protection or for talismanic purposes. It obviously did not see battle, but one would wear this for ceremonial purposes and just giving that like little extra good luck, which I absolutely love. And this was a really popular aspect of South Asian arms and armor and Katars, not only from South India, but also North India. There's a really beautiful Katar in the Wallace collection, the accession number, and their website is also a little challenging. It's OA1881, and that is a North Indian Katar, and the entire hilt is covered in a Sanskrit inscription dedicated to, it's the Ram Raksha Stotra. It's a hymn that basically invokes Ram, which it happens to be the 7th avatar of Vishnu. And it's basically just asking for Ram's protection. And this is a great example of a beautifully executed inscription in Kofgari or false damascening on a weapon. Like, I can read it clearly. It's stunning. Like the work is just absolutely insane. The entire stotra or hymn wraps around the whole hilt and the crossbars, and it took me a while to translate it because you have to literally flip this weapon over to read it. It kind of felt like dealing with a Rubik's cube. You're just kind of flipping this dagger in your hands to try to read the inscription, but it's just stunning. And this was also, not meant for battle, although highly functional. But this was just about bringing luck to the owner.
So what was the description all about? It was a verse or a? It's
a hymn. It's a Hindu prayer that invokes invokes Ram. Ram is the seventh avatar of Vishnu, as I mentioned, but he's also worshipped as a deity in his own right. He's the central figure of the great Hindu epic, the Ramayana, or Ramayana is how it's pronounced. So he's also a warrior god. So it's kind of appropriate that hymn dedicated to him is decorating this Katar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
You know, the piece before that, on the one from the Met that had the 10 incarnations on the side.
Yeah.
Like when I first pulled the picture up, it's like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. And then once you scan over to the pictures of the sides of the hilt, it's like, oh wow.
Yes, exactly. I remember when I was looking up this dagger for some research, and I was like, did I get the accession number wrong? Because like it looks like, okay, it's a nice Katar, but all right. And then you go through the images, and you're like, oh yeah, there's the good stuff. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
All pierced handles, or the hilt is all pierced, right? And then
yeah, and it's all chiseled and engraved and gilt in gold, and like the execution is just amazing because you can clearly make out each incarnation perfectly and identify each one, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Like both of these talismanic examples are such, the level of execution is so incredible because everything is so clear, from identifying the figures on the first one to reading the Sanskrit that decorates the entire hilt of the Wallace Collection one. It's really impressive.
Hit us again with the Wallace Collection pieces number, please.
Yeah, absolutely. The accession number is OA.
Letter O?
Yep, letter O. And
Okay.
A as an apple, 1881.
Okay. For some reason, I couldn't get that one to come up, so I was relying
can't
on your
either.
description.
And it could just be classified as dagger instead of Katar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, their website is challenging. You notice a trend with these British institutions. Francesca's gonna kill me when she hears this.
Not impressed, Wallace.
Yeah, Wallace, come on. You have such a great collection. Why are you hiding it or making it so difficult?
All right, well, we'll find it, and we can share the link if other people have trouble pulling it up like we did.
Yeah, and I can always post it too. It's such a great piece.
Yeah. We're 50% sure you didn't make it up. It's
I mean, it's one of her favorites, Michael.
It's one of my favorites. Gosh.
I think like you said, the talismanic stuff, kind of like the suit of armor or the chainmail that we talked about in the first time you joined us, that stuff is super, super cool, right?
Yeah.
It's got definitely a whole other vibe to it where it's much more than just a weapon. I'm using air quotes, right? But
Yeah.
it's powerful. It's very
Yes,
powerful.
exactly.
You're going
Yeah.
to battle for your gods and countries and stuff. You need that.
Yeah, exactly. And I just feel like that even just creating them must have been such a like meditative experience, like really just kind of putting, whether it's that male suit and you have the 99 names of Allah and putting the names of God into this shirt, or here where you are invoking a god in a hilt from the Wallace Collection that may or may not have this guitar. That just is not showing up now, making me look like an idiot, but whatever. Thanks, Wallace. And then the Met Katar, just like having that, being the artisan that put in the effort to make them. I can't imagine what kind of, it must have been just such a humbling experience too.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you guys have other questions for Rachel?
What's going to be our next weapon?
Oh man. I have like a whole list. Like Mark was talking about how we should talk about Rachel's like top 5, and I was like 500 because then there's subsections. There's like, okay, It would be like the Oscars, like best supporting dagger, best dagger. Like, there's so many. best dagger that you would hide in your
In
sleeve.
a comedy.
Best dagger supported by a musical score.
Supported by another dagger to the side.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
We'll definitely do Rachel's favorites, and we're going to call it top 5, and she's going to go off the rails, but that's okay because we do that a lot.
It will be
That's only fair. That's what we do.
Be like a 5-hour-long episode, but you know.
Well, I told her we did 3 more knives you should know about, and it was 3 each.
5.
So 12 plus, another 12 or 20. Pretty typical. But that's okay. We like to talk about this stuff. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Yeah.
Rachel, thank you for taking so much time to talk to us again about
Oh
your
my God, it's my pleasure.
About
my
your
I learned
pleasure.
a lot.
air quotes
A lot.
favorite.
Yeah, my favorites. Yes. Yeah.
She says that to all the podcasts.
No, it was really my pleasure. I had, again, so much fun with you guys. And now I'm going to sit here and stare at that painting after Tom dropped that bomb. And I'm just going
Yeah.
to stare at it and be like, which way is he going? But it makes total sense.
Never know.
Tom, yeah. But it was such a pleasure. Thank you again so much for having me.
Oh, pleasure's 100% ours.
Yeah.
No, thank
It was
you.
awesome.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
What a great journey.
Like you said, we learned a bunch of stuff. I think even you walking us through the difference geographically, even some notable time differences, right? The cross-pollination of cultures, right? With European
Yeah.
blades and other stuff and other things that look like they came from somewhere else, right? Or were influenced by something. That's all, I don't know, it's part of that big web that makes up how these things happen in the first
Yeah.
place. And that's really cool to think about.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
We'll definitely be bugging you to come back and join us again, whether it's favorites or we had some other fun ideas as well. So
Oh, I would love to. It's not a bug at all. I'm super excited for the next one.
well, I'm glad we had a hand in ruining your friendship with Francesca and
Yep.
putting what was
They're
his
evil
name?
that
Boss
way.
Patrick.
Buff Patrick in
Buff
your head.
Patrick, yes. Yeah, I'm going to go back and change like every record that I've worked on and put like fleur-de-lis like motif to Buff Patrick,
AKA Buff Patrick.
aka Buff Patrick.
Right. Please accept this amendment or update to my previous description submitted for this object.
Exactly. This is grounded in research and please make these changes.
Yes.
Please and thank you.
Modern pop culture references help the viewer understand.
Exactly. And relate to the object. So this is completely necessary.
And that's how you lose your PhD.
Yeah. Turns it into a PH was.
Yes, exactly.
Too much fun. Well, always a pleasure, Rachel. We appreciate your time.
Likewise.
We have a great Facebook group. The Facebook groups have been really, really fun, and they'll really enjoy this episode. We'll see some neat things there. We'll be able to share some of the stuff that you showed us.
Right.
The numbers really help people find that stuff much more easily. It was certainly easy for us to find them in most cases, and that'll be really cool for folks that listen along and hopefully aren't.
Post up my pictures a couple weeks late.
Tom comes a little late to the party.
Sorry.
He was at the beach. It's fine.
Ah,
Sorry.
But yeah, helps people track the stuff down, and it makes a
Exactly.
huge difference to be able to actually see it. So
yeah, absolutely. And a lot of these institutions, especially the Met, have these great high resolution images. So you can zoom in on those details and look at things a little bit better. And then hopefully the Wallace collection object can be found. Yeah, that's
Air
a bummer.
quotes.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, but for the most part, everything else should be pretty easy to find. So I hope everybody gets a chance to take a look at them and really just enjoy how beautiful they are.
For sure.
And if your kid doesn't have a guitar yet, I mean, let's go ahead and get them these guitars.
Yeah, exactly. They make the perfect birthday or Christmas gift. Like, I
Yes.
mean, I don't see any problem with them.
Right.
They're-
Savings
they're-
bond?
Nope.
No, that's boring.
No. College fund? Come on.
Nobody's got time for that.
Nobody has time for this.
And I'm
Yeah.
glad you brought that up because, someone on our show has been talking about making a Katar.
Yes.
It's going to
Yes.
happen. I'm going to do it.
I'm really looking forward to this.
Will there be a child's version available?
Oh my God.
I don't know. Maybe.
A baby Katar?
He's so cute.
So cute. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 fingers.
So I think Rachel is
Trying real hard
holding
not
you.
to make a Katar.
Guitar.
You played that joke once
Trying
already.
real hard. Can't help it.
It's still good. It's still good.
It's still good. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I just think of a blade with a little some keys on the end of it.
Instead
Oh
of
my
the ivories
God.
up there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
But they're like gilt and gold.
of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course.
Right. And all the sharp and flat keys are like emerald encrusted or something.
Yeah. That makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Emerald.
So Tom, I think Rachel's holding you to this Katar building thing.
Oh, I am.
She has expectations.
High expectations.
I'm planning on it. I've got the drawing right here in front of me.
And no pack of wood.
No pack of wood's going on this one.
Packwood, Rachel, is like this funky, multi-layered plywood, colorful layers of plywood.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that could be for the baby Katar.
It'd be like no, it'd be like if they would have made them out of dirt instead of like
Oh.
gold.
Oh, gee
That's like-
whiz. Such a shot. Oh,
Dude, that's a little harsh, don't you think?
it is a little harsh.
Of course it is.
But no, I can't stop thinking that Paco
So-
was the dirt weed of handle material.
Exactly.
Thanks for putting that in my head.
Oh, man.
So context, like in the 80s, pack of wood was like hot, right? Because I guess I didn't have anything else. But
Was that or dirt? Apparently.
now it's kind of funny to use it because it's actually more expensive than some of the stuff that we
Some of
normally
the good
use.
stuff, yeah.
And like for a Christmas present a couple years ago, I gifted them all kitchen knives with pack of wood handles.
Nice.
Right. They're very cool.
Mm-hmm. He actually made it look real pretty.
Mine opens the mail every day.
That's awesome. Well, I think a baby Katar out of that would be
Acceptable.
acceptable. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it has enough bling.
Mm.
Well, you could lean heavy on the guilt action.
Yeah.
Well, I've explained what I want to do, right?
I think so, but tell us again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause we want it on
Okay,
record.
sweet.
Yes.
Rachel's
So-
keeping track. She's going to hold you to a time. I'm just telling you, we've had this discussion offline. She's
Oh yeah.
she's tapping her wristwatch as she tells us about it.
Oh yeah. I'm
Well,
putting a
it's-
countdown in my phone. It starts
kind of been-
after this podcast.
Well, it's kind of been difficult figuring this out because, like, you look at those and I can't figure them out how the blade would work. But
Yeah.
I think I've got it figured out. And so I want it to be like talismanic. So I'm also into like urban fantasy reading, like Monster Hunters and stuff. So I'm going to do a fuller down the middle, and on each side I'm going to do inlays of wood with silver, so you could kill vampires or werewolves.
Oh.
Because it'd be like spike and silver. Yeah.
right. Oh,
That's kind of my
that.
thought process on this.
Check
What's
it out.
the Buff Patrick situation?
Yeah. That's
I didn't know about that. I don't know. Maybe I'll put SpongeBob instead.
nice.
Tom's got lasers and stuff. He could just like zap that right into the blade, no problem.
Would really
Oh,
fit in with the
okay.
piercing that they
Yes.
do.
Exactly.
SpongeBob would.
Yeah. SpongeBob.
Yeah. And then when I saw some of these hilts, I thought maybe use a CNC and do some piercing in the blade instead of a fuller, but I don't know where it's going to go. We'll have to play around.
Yeah.
I'll look forward to seeing it at Blade Show.
I'm planning. I'm working towards it. I don't know if it'll happen. You know, the boarding cut list didn't actually happen, but I want this to happen, so we'll see.
We know.
Is it for this year's Blade Show or for
We're not
next
gonna
year's?
specify a
Okay.
Let's not be too specific.
some
but-
blade show.
Okay, because I just wanted to know for the countdown that I'm setting in my phone. So
Right. This one is yeah, what are we, like 70 days out or something?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So maybe next year. And then
No,
I can
I'm
Tom, I
gonna
can
try to
just
do it
send
this
you
year, but-
reminders. Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm going to try for this year. We'll see. I've got a project right now that we've got to get off the mill. And then I'm going to try to figure out where I can get titanium this big.
Nice.
And then,
Wow.
yeah, we're going to try to build.
I'm excited.
It sounds so disappointing when Rachel says it that way. Well, maybe next year, Tom. Like she's patting you on the
Yeah, I
head
don't want to
gently,
disappoint
like,
anyone.
Right.
Just wanted to give him enough time to create the werewolf Katar and the baby Katar.
I don't know. I'm not promising a baby guitar yet. I got to get one guitar down first.
Okay. All right.
All right.
And then the Katar family follows. Got it.
I kind of feel like Sean and Michael should be helping me out with some of this stuff too. Like they should build their own version.
Yeah.
Dude, I've been sending out positive vibes the whole time.
Yes.
This damn thing still ain't done. I've lost a lot of faith in you personally.
Well, I'm just saying, you guys, we should all bring one to Blade.
Well, maybe it should just be a Katar elaboration.
Oh my God. Mark, you've been on fire tonight.
Dude.
Yeah.
Left and right.
Did you have an extra kid or something? Because the dad joke is really strong.
Hey, the dad jokes are thick on this
Something
show.
we
I gotta
should
try to
know.
hang. You got the vibes from Sean. You got some suggestions from Michael. You got time management from Rachel. And, I'll send you some laser imagery you can blast into that baby, and bam, you're
Sweet.
done,
Yeah,
my man.
done.
All right, yeah.
Mark of the Maker.
Actually, some thoughts and
Collaboration.
prayers.
Probably some Latin words or something.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Huh. All right, I'm on it.
Well, this episode's gone wildly off the rails, as tends to happen with us at times. So, again, thanks everybody for your support and help, and Rachel for taking the time to chat with us. And we look forward to having you back.
Yes.
We have fun things planned, fun ideas, and I think that's it. Everybody, thanks for listening as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
To learn more about our makers, you can find Tom Crine on the web at crineknives.net, in his Facebook group, Crine Knives, or in his Instagram account, at Crine Knives. For Michael Birch, check birchtreeblades.com, Facebook group Birch Tree Blade Works, or Michael's Instagram at birchtreeblades. For myself and the Raygun Bead Project, we're on the web at raygundivision.com. We have a Facebook group called Raygun Division, or my personal Instagram, at msteiner. For those interested in photos, references from the show, or some discussion about the show itself, you can find us on the web at markofthemaker.com, in a Facebook group called Mark of the Maker, or on our Instagram, at Mark of the Maker. Last but not least, the ultra cool and haunting background music we use for the show is a piece called Noir Guitar by Stevie's Amp Shack, found at the Free Music Archive and licensed under Creative Commons CC BY 4.0. Thanks for listening.